Welcome to the Generous Business Owner Podcast, where business owners gain inspiration and encouragement to live a legacy, not just leave one. And now your hosts, Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt.
Welcome, everybody, to this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. My name is Jeff Thomas, and we have a very special guest with us today, Terry Trayvick. Terry, this is going to be a great story because Terry's seen both sides. He had a big corporate career in public companies, and then he's been an entrepreneur for the latter half of his career. And so he started all kinds of businesses, from business consulting to real estate. I won't ruin it. We'll let Terry tell you the story. But Terry, welcome to the program.
Well, Jeff, good to be with you today. I'm looking forward to a great conversation. So let's just jump in.
Yeah, let's jump in. Now, Terry, we generally start with just kind of where you grew up, what your family was like. Well, was there any kind of entrepreneurial thing going on or not? Any kind of faith thing happening in the family? Well, where were you, and how was that growing up?
No, that's a great question. Well, I grew up in Dayton, Ohio. So I'm a huge Ohio State Buckeye fan. So
yeah.
I know we played Texas recently, so I hope that's not bothering you.
Ohio State, right?
The Ohio State. There you go.
Yeah.
I didn't go to Ohio State.
You miss the. Yeah.
Right. You can't miss the D part. I didn't go to Ohio State, but when you're born in Ohio, you kind of become a big fan.
Exactly. Yeah.
But grew up in a family of five. I was the youngest of five kids. Parents were, both worked, middle income family. Both my parents were part of the Great Migration North. My mother's from Georgia. My father's from Alabama. They moved up to Ohio. They met there, five kids. And like I said, grew up in a neighborhood, middle class neighborhood. It was the type of neighborhood where if you wanted to play 5-on-5 basketball, all you had to do was go outside. There were kids everywhere.
Exactly.
I mean, and fortunately, there were kids all in my age group. I still have some of my best friends from that time are still friends today.
That's
Many
awesome.
of them were in my wedding, et cetera.
Wow.
Went on to University of Cincinnati, and then went on to business school. But from a church perspective, I started going to church, I think, probably around the second grade.
Okay.
Maybe a little bit before that. But, we were a family that just went to church every week. But we didn't do much. We didn't read the Bible at home or anything like that. It was just a routine that we did every week. Heard about Jesus, but can't say I really knew who he was.
Yeah. Kind of cultural a little bit, it was a thing.
Yeah, mostly cultural. I mean, the black church is kind of it was an all African-American church. It's kind of a community. It's part of the community.
Yeah.
You go and there's like an extension of your family, actually.
Right.
Yeah. So
So good community.
Still friends with a lot of people from my church.
Well, you do a good job keeping in touch with people, man. I can learn from you on that. I need to do a better job of that. But
no, I absolutely believe in that and keeping in touch with people, and I believe in lifetime friends. I mean, I don't call people every week or anything like that, but I try to stay in touch. Yeah.
Okay, so off to University of Cincinnati. My dad went there, by the way. So, but, love it. And then how did you decide? Tell us what you studied and why you chose that.
My intent was to study electrical engineering, but I filed my application late. None of my parents went to college. No one who could train me or teach me.
Right. What the process was like.
What the process was like. I filed it late. They said, unfortunately, all the engineering spots had been given away.
Yeah.
At that point in time, and they recommended a major called industrial management. And industrial management is a combination of business and engineering. Mm-hmm. It was perfect for me.
Yeah, I was going to say, knowing your personality a little bit, I have a feeling that was a God thing.
Yeah, it was that when I reflect back on my life, that was definitely a God thing. That He orchestrated that for sure. It was a great combination of the sciences, mathematics on the business side, the marketing, et cetera. So it was really designed to run sort of a manufacturing environment.
Okay.
Where you have both the business side, and the engineering side. but that was perfect.
And did you get into that right after college, or did you go straight to business school?
I went to General Motors after college for a couple of years
Okay.
and decided I'd go to night school to get my MBA. And when I signed up to go to night school, I took the GMAT, and all of a sudden I got a letter from Columbia Business School saying, "Hey, we got your GMAT scores. Why don't you come here?"
Wait, you didn't even apply?
I didn't even
They sent
apply.
you a letter?
Yes,
I've never even heard of that.
yes,
That's crazy.
yes. I'm sorry, I did apply. They sent me a
Okay.
letter encouraging me to apply.
Okay.
Yeah, but it was based off, them receiving my GMAT. I don't even remember my score was. I don't think I did that well, quite frankly. But again, another God story. And fast forward, that's where I met my wife.
But now you can't do that. That one you got to go full time, right? Or
yes, full time.
yeah, because were you working in Detroit, or were
I was working in Dayton, Ohio.
you were working in Dayton?
Yes,
And so you're working for GM? Is that what you're working for?
I was working for GM at the time.
So did they give you 2 years to go, or how'd that work?
I just left. I saved up a lot of money, left, and went and moved.
Oh, you
to New
did it
York.
on your own nickel.
Did it on my own nickel.
Oh man,
Yeah.
that was a leap of faith.
Yeah. Well, I was saving up. I figured I'd save money either for a house or something special.
Right.
But it ended up being for business school.
Okay, so you get out, and then what?
So then I moved back to Ohio, get a job with Procter and Gamble. I spent many years there, but 9 years in total, in the finance area. So I was assistant treasurer. I was, senior analyst for the Crest toothpaste. Eventually made it to assistant director of our respiratory care business. And then at that time I was married, and my wife wanted to move to Chicago because that's where her sister was. My wife's from New York, but her sister was in Chicago. She gave me 9 years in Cincinnati. I said, okay, we'll move to Chicago. And and we moved to Chicago. And I went to Chicago without a job because she got a job.
Wow.
Well, the story is I told her, if you find a job, we'll move to Chicago. Literally within a week, she had 5 offers.
Yeah. Oops.
Yeah. So I said, okay. I knew all roads lead to Cincinnati when it comes to Procter and Gamble. They wanted to keep me there, and I knew it's like, if I'm in Chicago, that doesn't make sense. So I'll just leave and find something when I get to Chicago. And I did. I first went to work for Sara Lee for about a year. Then I went to R.R. Donnelley.
And how long were you at R.R. Donnelley?
So at R.R. Donnelley from 1997 till 2006, so 9 years.
Yeah. And you ran all, I mean, kind of on the financial side, what was the
position? I started as assistant treasurer at R.R. Donnelley, built a strong relationship with the treasurer and the CEO. CEO liked me. I told him, hey, I eventually want to run a business. He said, okay, become vice president of finance for one of our businesses. Sent me to our book business. Did well there. My boss got promoted to a bigger business, maybe senior vice president of finance. And then the CEO asked me to run strategy for the company. Okay. So I ran strategy for the company. And then we had a business in New York, a global financial services group that was losing $20 million a year. I'd, had a reputation for helping to turn businesses around. So they promoted me to global president, sent me to New York to turn that business around. And we turned that business around, went from losing 20 million to making 60 million in 3 years. Wow. So a pretty strong success story there. And it was one of those things, Jeff, where I would turn to my budget and I would say, hey, we're going to improve profits by 15 million next year. And next thing I know, we're improving profits by 30 million. And my boss would say, you're a sandbagger. I said, no, not a sandbagger. I did 15. God did the other. Oh, nice. And he would say, no, you did it. And he wasn't, I wouldn't say he was a believer. At this point, my life had been totally transformed where I was giving all glory to God. And there's a story behind that. And God just blessed everything that he sent me to. I wouldn't say everything I touched turned into gold. I would say everywhere he sent me turned into gold. And that's just how it worked out for me at R.R. Donnelley.
You mind sharing a little of that transformation story? What changed?
Yeah, so as I said, I grew up in the church, but it was more of a cultural thing.
Yeah.
In 1999, December of 99, I had three kids. My son, he was 13 months old and got meningitis. And it was so bad, he was in a coma. Um,
Wow.
and each day things got worse and worse and worse. And one day we'd come in and they said, we're not getting any responses when we shine a flashlight in his eyes. And then the next day they would say, hey, his kidneys are failing. Then the next day they would say, all of a sudden that fluid's building up in his brain. Like every day was getting worse and worse.
Something terrible.
Yeah, very terrible. I mean, and as a finance engineering type mindset, I'm trying to solve it, right?
Right.
And it got to the point where I knew I had no other option. So I went to a quiet place by myself and I just cried out to God. And Jeff, I didn't know what else to do. And I really tried to exchange my life for my son's. And I literally begged God. I said, hey, God, just, you know what? Because I didn't know any better. I was like, hey, God,
Right.
just take me. Just take my life.
Best thing you could come up with.
Yeah. It was like, well, let's do a trade. Take me. But
Right.
whatever you do, don't take my son. And at first time I heard the audible voice of God, and he said, I'll take you. Right. But he said, but I'll take you to be part of my kingdom here on earth.
Oh, beautiful.
And from this day forward, you work for me and you will go wherever I tell you to go, do whatever I tell you to do. I want you. That same night, Jeff, my wife and I are sitting in the hospital room, and all of a sudden the lights flick on and we see people over my son's body saying, stick with us, Miles. And he was in a cold blue, right?
Yeah.
And oh, by the way, before I get there, when God said, I want you from now on, you go wherever I tell you to go. And he said, oh, by the way, don't worry. My son's name is Miles. Don't worry, Miles is fine. So here he is still in coma. Nothing changed in my mindset, but God has made that promise to me. So that same night was my first test. Cold blue. I rise up out of sleep like 2 a.m. And people and the nurse is saying, stick with us, Miles, stick with us. My wife looks at me, I look at her, and I say, don't worry, he's fine. I don't know why I said that. It was just repeating what God has said.
Yep.
And immediately his heart started beating again. So the power of the tongue, right?
Are you guys like sleeping in his room in the hospital?
Yes.
Oh man.
Yeah. We never left him alone in that room for 4 months. We just traded off. But that night we had help at our house with our other kids, so we were both there.
Okay, but
fast forward, because this is the most important part of the story, Jeff.
So good, dude.
My boss that was calling me every day, getting an update on my son, and every time he would call me, I would say, "Well, he's still alive, but he's not out of the woods yet."
Right.
But every time I said those words, "He's not out of the woods," "He's not out of the woods," I felt this angst inside saying, why are you saying that? God said he's fine. But I'm a corporate executive. I'm not going to tell my boss I just heard from the Lord, right?
Right.
Because I'm not confident in that at the point.
Right.
I'm thinking I'm losing my marbles myself. Right. But then after several days of saying he's not out of the woods yet, I'm reading the newspaper and I get to this comic strip. And in this comic strip, there was just two trees talking to each other with a bunch of trees cut down behind it. And the only words in the comic strip were I wish you stopped saying we're not out of the woods yet.
Come on, man.
So at that point, I said, God, I get it. I get it. I got to say what you say and no longer what the world says. I got to say what you say, not what the doctors say. So I called in all of my son's professional doctors, his nephrologist, his GI doctor, his you name them all. Every specialist there is, he had. And I had a meeting probably with about 15 medical professionals. This had never been done at a hospital where a family called all the doctors together at once. Right. And I said, look, we believe our son is healed. I know it doesn't look that way, but we are believing it. And all we're asking you to do is to stop saying that we will not do and just do the best that you can. And I went person to person. Will you just do the best that you can? And they all agreed. Fast forward, he came out of the coma. Fast forward, he gets home. Now, this is not a straight line to success. Don't get me wrong, right? It's up and down along the way.
Well, give us a little bit of the timeline between when God speaks to you. How much time is passing during this
So
thing?
3 days after he's in the hospital is when God speaks to me. He goes
Okay.
in on December the 10th. God speaks to me on December 13th. So that's my rebirth day for me
Okay.
personally, December 13th, right?
Okay.
That's when God speaks to me.
Okay.
That's on a Monday. 5 days later on a Saturday is when I get the newspaper thing that says, "I wish you stopped saying we're not out of the woods yet."
It's
And
the
from
it's
that,
the it's the weekend paper comics
yes,
back in the
yes,
day. Yep.
yeah. So God's so powerful, He'll have a comic send us a message,
I mean, come on, man.
right? And I took that comic strip and I put it on my son's bed, and every time someone came in the room to try to give an evil report, was get out of the room. We're not receiving that evil report here. And we
Right.
just had to go in faith. Were there dark days? Absolutely after that. But I had to keep going back to that promise over and over and over again. Not only that, Jeff, I had to commit to doing what I said I would do. He said, "You do this,
Yeah.
I'll do this."
It required
Right?
some obedience.
Yes.
Your
Right.
language had to change.
It had to change, absolutely. Because he said, because remember, I said, "Take me," and he said, "All right, I'll take you." That
Because
means from now on.
we were just talking before we started recording about the need for acts of faith before the
Yes.
miracle happens.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? Like that was an act
Yes.
of faith. You're like, because you felt the conviction when you were saying not out of the woods, right? And you're
Right.
like, and
Can't
then
do
the
it anymore.
cartoon, like, I mean, what a generous thing. Like
Yeah.
he knew you weren't
Absolutely.
getting it. So, and you
Yeah.
had the angst, but you're like, okay, that was the sign. All right. I mean,
Yeah.
now how long? Sorry, I'm just trying to pick. This is like a movie, man. Well, how long was it till you called the doctors together? Well,
Probably a week after that.
okay. I mean,
Uh,
this is all pretty bang bang though. I mean, this is
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah. Because my son's still in a coma, right?
Wow.
He's still in a coma because he was in a coma for, I mean, well, he was in the hospital for 4 months, probably in a coma about 2 months. So they're looking at my wife and I like we have lost our marbles,
Right.
right?
Yeah, and he's not coming. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, he's not coming out. He'll never walk again. He'll
Yeah.
never
Yeah.
talk. He'll never see. If he does come out, he'll be institutionalized, et cetera, et cetera. Right.
And so
So
it took another 6 weeks or something, maybe.
he started coming out of the coma. So it he came out of the coma. My wife holding him in her arms, and they're still saying he can't hear. Right.
Mm.
I come in the room. My wife's holding him in his arm, and I say, "Hey, Miles," and he says, "Dad."
Mm-hmm. How old
Oh,
is he?
13 months.
Oh my
So what do you mean he can't hear? I said, "Hello." I said, "Hey, Miles," and he
God.
says,
And he
"Dada."
answered.
Yeah. So he recognized my voice,
Oh
right?
gosh.
Um, so anyway, that was my and I've been running this race ever since.
Oh
So
my gosh.
that's 20.
We could hit stop and print this one, man. I mean, that is here's the thing, man. There's so much to this story. Holy smokes. The number one thing that I'm thinking is how loving God is and how creative he is.
Yeah.
And I love the way you tell the story where you didn't know what to say. End of your rope, trade me. Trade me. I'll
Yep. Yep.
theologically, meh, but
Yeah. Theologically, God didn't do this,
yeah,
right?
but he meets you where you are, right?
Exactly.
And then he
Exactly.
goes, you know what? I'll take that trade.
Yeah, I'll take that
I'll
bet.
take it. All
Let's
right,
do
okay. It's not what I would have suggested, but I'll take it.
it.
Let's work. Let's work with what we got. But
Exactly.
here's how we're going to do it.
Exactly.
And then requiring the faith, and I love your honesty about the struggle of saying it out loud. to other
Yes.
people.
Yes.
That's like, that makes sense actually. And
I didn't even say it to my wife for 4 days, Jeff. I was I was trying to figure out what the heck is going on here. Did I hear this correctly?
and then it took
Right?
the cartoon.
The cartoon.
Come on, man.
And I jump out of my chair and I say, I get it. I got it. Let's roll. Let's go. Let's do it.
So many lessons in that, man. You know,
Yeah.
our faith doesn't have to be perfect. We just
Exactly.
have to engage, right? Like what are the lessons that you would, I mean, this thing is so many lessons, but when you're telling this story, what would you like people to hear? You know?
Um, you know what? That God always has a way out.
Mm.
He always has a way out. If and his plans will not be thwarted.
Mm.
And here's the other thing. He's very patient. We know this, but I got to experience it. Here's this guy that I just have my burning bush moment, and I'm still trying to figure out whether or not I believe what I just went through, right? Because it was such a unique experience that I never experienced before when God kind of pulls you out of yourself and has a conversation with you, just you and him. And it was almost like he was leading me to say some of these things, right? Yeah, I mean, I can't explain it any better than that.
Let's unpack that for a minute. What do you mean by God always has a way out? What does that
uh,
mean?
my son's in this situation,
Yeah.
right? Um, as you said, I go to him without knowing what to do. I
It's
can't
a
figure
dead
it out
end.
anymore. It's a dead end. I, I've asked all the questions that I know to ask of the doctor. I've given them all the solutions I think they should do,
Mm.
right? Because I'm a problem solver,
Yeah.
right? But this problem I couldn't solve. And I think God was saying, I'm going to use those problem solving skills for what I'm going to do for you in the future, where I'm going to send you in the future.
Ooh.
But right now, you have to see that you don't have all the answers to everything. Only I have all the answers. And I will get you out of this. But you've got to submit to me and know that I am God, not you. Okay.
Okay.
Uh, so he knows my personality. He knows who I am,
Yeah.
and he's going to use the good part of me and get rid of the bad part of
He's the
me.
ultimate escape artist, man. He'll get you out
Yes.
of whatever jam it is. Maybe
Yeah.
not in that way, but in the way that he leads. You know what I mean? You
And
were fortunate. Some people's sons don't make. We understand, right?
exactly.
But there is
Exactly.
always an escape from, kind of at our end, shall we
But
say?
here's the other thing, Jeff. God knows my personality in that nothing really bothers me
Mm.
except, I said that I didn't tell you that when I was in the second grade, I joined my church. I got up out of the pew and walked up to the front of the church. You know why I joined the church that day?
Mm.
Because my mom was in the hospital, and the pastor said that Jesus is a healer, and anybody who needs healing, come forward.
Mm.
As a second grader, I'm there with my aunt because my mom's in the hospital. And I'm going up because I want God to heal my mother.
Right.
So God knows that how important my family is to me.
Yes, that's your weak spot, if you
That's
will.
my weak spot. Nothing else be like, whatever, God.
Right.
But in this case, we made the deal.
Dude. Wow. Kind of don't want to leave that story, but we got to move on.
All right.
I know everybody's thinking what I'm thinking right now. How's Miles today?
So Miles is great. Miles is healthy. He's had 2 kidney transplants. I gave him one of my kidneys
Wow.
when he turned 5. And then a great friend of ours in Texas gave him one of her kidneys
Mm.
3 years ago.
Mm.
Most kidneys last between 10 to 20 years.
Okay.
One that I gave him lasted 17, but he needed another one. So a good friend of ours donated one. My wife was not a match, so she couldn't do it.
Wow.
But he's doing well. Still some developmental issues, but he's healthy. He's still here with us at home. Goes to a day program.
Yeah.
Full of joy. My wife has written a whole book about that story.
Oh, what's it called?
It's called When Dreams Are Disrupted.
Oof.
By Sandy Ramsey. You can get it on Amazon, and I would recommend it for anyone who is going through any kind of challenge. So that would be everyone.
Yeah.
Right.
Send us a link. We'll put it in the show notes.
Okay, will do.
And that is awesome that he's doing well, and what a story. So now you kind of previewed that God would use some of these other skills you have down the road, and whoo, man, what a life-changing experience you just had. So, as Paul Harvey would say, what's the rest of the story?
Yeah.
The way,
fast forward in 2005, I had a prophecy set on my life that God was going to, that there's going to be a big change. That what was going to seem like a demotion was actually a kingdom promotion.
Mm-hmm.
And you fast forward, and I went from at 42 years old, running $1 billion business, to God then called me out of corporate America. And he called me out. I leave corporate America, but he tells me to leave, but he doesn't tell me where I'm going to go. So here I am. I got a 5th grader and 2 first grade kids. And
this was not on your spreadsheet.
No, wasn't part of my plan.
Right.
But obedience was.
Right.
And I prayed about it, and you never want to do anything like this without your wife being in complete agreement.
Amen.
Or your spouse, right? And she prayed about it. And it's like, okay, God is telling you to move, but He didn't tell me where I was going to go. So I went to work for my church for about a year. Interesting story is, as soon as I left, I got a call from a headhunter talking about being CEO for a company. And I'm in my car on the speakerphone, and my wife overhears it. And I said, "Did you say CEO?" And my wife looked at me and said, "Don't even think about it." I said, I know.
I like her already.
I was just asking for clarity. Right?
Yeah. Right.
Because we're all about trying to be obedient, right? I made this deal with the Lord.
Man.
Take care of my son. I'll do what you tell me to do.
Yep.
And then I started getting calls from people about, can you help this company with strategy? Remember, I ran strategy for our Donnelly. I started helping this company and that company, and next thing I know, it turned into a consulting business. And I started praying about, okay, God, what do you want me to do with this? And He told me, hey, I want you to help Christian businesses. So I that's when I started helping a business in Texas, Dallas, Texas, a home builder there. When he hired me to help him, he was like an $8 million business. Part of my strategy company is we do strategy execution and funding. Mm-hmm. So that means I stick around if you want me to. So I've been helping them since 2008. That business it went from like an $8 million business at its peak to about $300 million in revenue.
Wow.
And the focus of that business is to give to the kingdom as well. And then other businesses, Covenant, retirement communities, I've helped them, and other companies. And then in 2018, I started a small private equity firm, and I did my first fund, and that did really well. And it's still going. It was a 5-year fund, so it's unwinding right now. It was 5 plus 2 years, so a total of 7 years unwinding right now. And we delivered about 30% return annually for our investors on that. And then about 4 years ago, Jeff, God started speaking to me about using a private equity fund to help fund the kingdom. Hmm. So I started this new fund that I launched last year. The objective is to give away all of the carry on the fund. For your audience that may not know what carry is, in private equity, it's typically the profits are typically split 80% to the investors, 20% to the general partner. I'm the general partner, and the general partner's 20% is what they call a carry. Typically, people use that carry to enrich themselves, but God told me to use the carry in order to help fund the kingdom. So what we've started off, until we get enough money to grow it, to take care of our infrastructure and our documentation, we say we at a minimum give 50% of the carry away from day one. And then once we get enough to pay everybody's salary, then we give 100% of that away beyond that. So that's what I'm doing now. And the way I think about it, Jeff, and I know you're a believer in this as well, that God is the owner of everything. He's the owner of our time, our talent, and our treasures. In fact, I even hate saying ours. It all is his. I mean, he can decide when is our last day, and how much treasure he trusts us with, and what talents he actually gives us. So he's using all those things with me, my time, talent, and treasures through this private equity fund in order to fund the kingdom. So that's what I do every day. I get up and try to figure out ways to make money for our investors, money for our portfolio companies, and then use that carry to fund the kingdom. So we put it into a DAF, and then use that DAF to fund various projects and things like that.
Yeah, we've facilitated some of that with some other venture and private equity folks, where we've donated those carries to the DAF, and then as the liquidity happens, it flows right through. So that's a great way to do it. Well, I mean, you shared just a life-changing story. But I'd still like to ask this question.
Sure.
Okay, so you had this first part of your career, in these big kind of public companies, and I just love the way you tell that story about, like, it's just so real about, like, hearing from God and just, like, still keeping quiet. Like, what do I do with this? And not wanting to tell your wife or your boss and whatever. And now that you've lived this for quite a while, what's kind of your advice? And we'll get to a specific thing, but just kind of an overarching advice before maybe we get to something specific. We'll kind of move that way. But how do you think about business as a platform? It's called the Generous Business Owner Podcast. Like, how do you kind of combine this faith that God's gifted you with, if you will, and how is your thinking of business as a platform to live out that faith evolved?
Yeah. What I would say is the obedience to your call first that leads to whatever God's calling you to do.
That's good.
You don't start a business to serve God. You serve God and see if he tells you to start a business. You know the difference I'm making there is,
yes.
I got into business because that's where God led me. I didn't say I'm going to start a business and then God bless it.
Yes.
So
we talked about this before I started recording. That's one thing we have in common. I spent 25 years doing that corporate stuff, and I was, frankly, humanly, I had deferred comp as long as
exactly.
You could see, I could see, and I was like, I'm happy, and God's like, but he created discomfort in me, and I'm like, what are you trying to tell me? And then he told me to start a business. I was like, I'm not just like you. I mean, we weren't serial entrepreneurs.
Right.
It was just an act of obedience. And of course it was scary, because you got to take the acts of faith. You don't know how it's going to work out.
Exactly.
But isn't it cool when he tells you to do something, man? Isn't that like the safest place you can be?
Yeah. I'll share just one more piece of information with you. In corporate America, I never missed a budget. Always just flew past my numbers.
Right.
Always. That was just my reputation.
Right.
Always over deliver. When I tried to start businesses that God didn't tell me to start, failure.
Isn't that interesting?
It was only the businesses that God told me to start. When I leave corporate and I'm in this closet waiting on God to tell me what to do next, I'm a business person. I've got to do something. I start doing things, not because God told me, because I wanted to do something. Did not succeed in those things. It was only when God directed me, now go do this. Remember I said earlier that I used to believe everything I touch turns into gold. That's not true. It's everywhere that God sends me turns into gold. And that lesson was crystal clear when I left corporate and tried to do things, because God had called me out of corporate for a purpose, not to do what I wanted to do, but what he wanted to do through me.
I love the juxtaposition of those two statements. You know, the world, that is a line that the world uses regularly. Hey, everything that guy, I'm sure they said that about you. Oh man, we got to hire Terry. Everything he touches turns to gold.
Yep.
And
Yep.
and if I'm just repeating back what I heard, you're saying, look, I used to even believe that.
I did. I was the man. Come on,
Yeah,
Jeff.
yeah. Hey, it's true. When they say it, it's true.
Exactly.
And then God reveals in what you said is everywhere God sends me turns to gold.
Exactly.
You've sent your place, and you had to have the experience of going places without him where it was
Yep.
failure. So anyway, it's just
Exactly.
that, one of the
Exactly.
things we talk about a lot is at Arcus is obedience over outcome. Like, we're not really responsible for the outcome. I mean,
No.
there's so many factors in business,
Yeah.
but we are responsible for our obedience. So we talk about
Absolutely.
take up and take instructions and go do it. You don't just sit
Yep.
back, you go do it.
Exactly.
And then you trust God for
Exactly.
the results and then give him the credit,
Yep.
frankly.
For sure.
So
Because I
man,
mean, yeah, he's the man. That's what,
right, not us.
yeah,
We
exactly.
know the man.
Yeah. Yeah, exactly. It's good to know him,
Right.
right? It's good to be
Exactly. And
part
and
of
he
it.
loves us. It's not like,
Yeah.
he needs us to do much. He's
Yeah.
letting us be included in this cool story as sons and daughters. Well, Terry, this has been amazing, man. And as we wrap up, we always ask that question. Just, what a story, man. I had an experience, obviously a different situation, but I had an experience where I heard God audibly speak to me. I know a lot of people have not had that experience, but I frankly, I would, I think it's okay to pray for one. If you're
Yeah.
really trying to hear from God, even if it's not audible the way you and I heard it, he does give us, he will speak to us however he chooses. And for each of us, for me, it was super personal in a
Yep.
really unique way, like you, totally different situation, but he will speak to all of us, maybe not audibly, but in the middle of the night, wake up, quiet time, prayer, singing, whatever.
Absolutely. Absolutely.
Um, and so that's a big encouragement. What would be just a practical tip for somebody behind you on the journey, um, who's trying to kind of use this business platform? How do I do faith and business kind of together? What's just some practical tip you could leave folks with today?
Yeah. If I could give two quick ones.
Yeah, please.
One would be get a mentor who has done it.
Mm,
Find people. There are a lot of people out there that's doing this. We can sometimes think we're unicorns, but God, he uses a lot of people are doing what we're talking about, right? That are generous and creating businesses that are ordained by God and led by God with His character and culture, etc. But the other tip that I would, and this is where you're leading to earlier about hearing from the Lord. I would just encourage everybody, if you haven't really sought the Lord, to ask Him for direction. If you would just take the next 2 weeks, next 30 days, just to get into the practice of it. The next 30 days, go to your quiet spot and ask God for directions for your business that day. What deals are you supposed to do? What people are you supposed to call? What's supposed to be your focus that day? And see what comes to your mind, and then do that thing, and just get into that habit of every day asking God for direction and then obeying those instructions, and then watch what happens. Because I'm telling you, everywhere He leads you will turn into gold. And it doesn't always mean financial. It could be an impact on a person's life.
Right.
It could be an impact on your life. Prosperity is bigger than money. Healthier children, better marriage.
Fruits of the Spirit, man.
All that stuff comes with obedience and what God's calling you to do. So that would be my encouragement.
Man, I love
Get
that.
a mentor.
Yeah, get a mentor.
And spend some time each day for direction.
Very biblical advice on both counts, but even for the, ask, seek, knock, and the door will be open for you. That's biblical. And then the other one is what you're describing is daily manna, right? He's like, and I know you want the 5-year plan. I'm not going to give it to you.
Right.
I'll give you the 1-day plan every day.
Every day. I'll tell you what direction I'm sending you.
Right.
And then give you every step.
Yeah, I'll give you the 100-year plan.
Yeah, exactly.
but you got to wake up and take the day, and then it adds up. It adds up, and watch where it adds up to, man. That's what he told me to do, and I've been doing it, and I'll testify to that. And I always tell people all my plans are garbage, and all God's plans are amazing. The only reason this place is thriving is we're listening to Him. That's it. It's not because we have any good ideas.
But Jeff, isn't it great? You mentioned manna. Isn't it great when your only job is to go out and gather?
Right. It actually takes the pressure off.
Right.
It takes the pressure off.
Do what He tells you to do and just gather.
We're not the owner. We're just the steward. All right. The owner told me go out and get manna. All right, I'm getting manna. Okay, let's go. Let's
go do it. All right.
Well, anyway, Terry, this has been just a real treat. Thanks so much for joining us today.
Yeah, my pleasure. And thank you for this podcast. I think it can help many people, what you guys are doing with you and your team. So
thank you so much. Jeff. Thank you so much. Well, and thanks everybody for joining us for this week's Generous Business Owner Podcast. Share it with a friend, subscribe, and we'll see you next week. Thanks, everybody.
Thanks for listening to the Generous Business Owner Podcast with Jeff Thomas, Alan Barnhart, and Jeff Rutt. Make sure to follow the podcast so you don't miss an episode. You can find the guest contact information in the show notes. Stay tuned for the next episode.